Hey, friends, I would like to ask for your help in supporting the Autism Odyssey podcast by leaving a great review. I really want to stick around and have meaningful conversations. So please leave a review. I promise you, I read every comment, every review, and I appreciate everyone. Like many of you, when the telepathy tapes came out, I savored every episode like a fine piece of chocolate. And I fell in love with the families and the stories. And of course, in love with John Paul. In episode 9, when John Paul left his physical body, I wept and wept. And I can't even tell you the sadness as if he was my best friend. I'm not going to say that he died because of the fact that he is still so alive in so many ways to this day. And a big part of that is because of his mom, Libby Ralston Ingram. And Libby is here today. She is a speech and language pathologist. She runs an organization in memory of her son called Love John Paul that brings assistance to spellers. And she is a wealth of information. Libby, thank you so much for being on today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Betsy. I've been looking forward to this.
I know. So before we started the camera, I was telling Libby that a bunch of my friends that know both of us were just like, you two are going to be really good friends.
Like, well, from the first moment you said hello. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I get her.
Well, because I think the thing that's intrinsic with both of us is we're always seeking joy. No matter what curveball comes our way, we're always looking for the silver lining, for the joy and for the happiness that we can reach, the best thought that we can reach for.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So I have to say, John Paul became a speller relatively early. And I say that because my son didn't become a speller till he was 30. And you were one of the mavericks. Like, you were trained and exposed to several forms of spelling, of communication, way before most people even knew what it was.
Yes.
And that's really what I want you to talk about today. But I want you to weave in that explanation of the different forms, because whether it's, RPM, whether it's S2C, whether it's facilitated communication, the spellers program, they're all somewhat intertwined and have a lot related. And because you know all the different programs, you and Austin Moore are like the two of the masters of all the programs. I really want you to help, as you're telling a bit of your story, to also weave in like pros, cons, different nuances between all the different ways that spellers can learn to communicate with the letterboard.
I will. Okay, that sounds good. And I will say, as far as spellers method goes, I have not done their training. I've talked to a lot of parents who have done it, but they bring in an OT element to it.
Yes.
So,
and I actually want to talk about that because I actually think that's one of the greatest parts of it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And I think just because of my experience and having, worked, I did co-treatments with OTs, and I've worked, with kids for a very long time now, or in adults over 20 years, and seen lots of spellers and lots of kids on the spectrum, that I think sometimes if you've done that, you do those things naturally because you've learned them over the years. So I love that spellers method has really honed in and created that as part of their program. And so I really love that spellers, because Dana Johnson is a OT. So I love that they incorporated, because that's a huge piece.
It's so big. That intentional movement is so tremendously big. But you talk a lot about that in a lot of your sensory stuff too. So let's start from the beginning a little bit. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into a timeline, but I definitely want to talk about your interaction with each one of the programs and John Paul's response to each one of the programs.
So, I was just fortunate that I was at a prompt conference. It's not what was going to help John Paul. I was just hoping, but I knew it helps one of my kids, that had childhood apraxia speech. It would help somebody, and it might help John Paul.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm going for it. I just was lucky that the speech therapist sitting next to me had just been to Texas and seen Soma and said, I really think this is what your son needs. And I got a text in from another speech therapist who obviously had gone to the same. I mean, it was just like the universe screaming at me at that moment.
Right.
And at that point, Elizabeth Vossler was still doing RPM, so she was trained under Soma, and that was just such a interesting thing because I feel like for the first time in my life, I hit everything at just the sweet spot. Poor John Paul was at an ABA style school, and I mean, that's a whole nother discussion.
That's a whole other
That's a
that's
whole nother
that's a whole other
interesting rabbit.
cringe. Like it's
Yeah,
like
that's woo. So, he was doing that and I was unhappy because he was
yeah,
coming.
because we usually are.
Yeah, and I felt like, that no one seems to be understanding apraxia. It was just making me
Yeah.
crazy. And John Paul was wet and I was like, why is he wet? And they were, I don't know, I couldn't get him out fast enough, but shooting him with water or squirting him with water when he was doing something wrong, they were like, we had to
Oh,
baptize him. And I'm going, oh my God, would you do
oh
that
my
to your
God.
child? I mean,
Oh my, I wouldn't
think
even do
about
that to my dog. I mean, that's
Exactly. I would
unbelievable.
do it to my so people I just think there's a bully mentality with a lot of
Yeah,
practitioners in particular because they don't really understand. And if you're thinking everything's behavior, you're
right.
gonna have it's just so wrong. So Elizabeth was doing rapid prompting method, which was created by Soma, and it is a system of basically you're coaching the motor and you are teaching. So you are teaching because autistics like John Paul love to get information. They want to learn. They want their brains fed. And you're teaching them, but at the same time, you are training their motor to hit the letters. So I had gone and observed before I had John Paul do it.
Mhm.
Because again, Elizabeth was coming every month. And I watched her and I watched kids just like John Paul. And then they start spelling and I couldn't stop crying because I was like, finally, I'm seeing kids like John Paul doing this. Because there was always there, oh, well, they're just higher functioning and
Right.
they have
That's
better
always
motor
the excuse for it
control.
all. Right.
Exactly. And I went home and I said to John Paul, I think we found it. I said, I think I'm going to be able to help you communicate. And I'm not kidding you. It's like he looked at me, he walks over to me and just grabs me. And and I did a paper choice with him then and there. And he pointed to the right thing, just with the words. So I had said to Elizabeth, I said,
Right.
Elizabeth, do you think John Paul can read? And she said, how old is he? I said, he's 8. She's like, oh, he's been reading for years. Well, John Paul went right into it. The very first lesson, I remember it with Elizabeth, it was on like some jungle or something. And she said, can you name another kind of monkey? And he spelled spider monkey. And I'm thinking, what the? And I go home and told Thomas. Thomas says, oh yeah, we watched it on Wild Kratts last week. Like Jumpins knew exactly why he knew spider monkeys. So our guys are constantly absorbing information, constantly learning. So, it was the most exciting thing. So, rapid prompting method was having a lesson, you teach it, and then you ask questions that are knowns to begin with, and then you dive
Right.
further with semi-open and that sort of, thing. So, then Elizabeth had some other ideas, which were good ideas. I think that they were probably really good ideas, but they conflicted with what her agenda was and what she
Right.
cared about. And Elizabeth, I think, really wanted to be able to make it so that it was easier to get research on or to validate it, maybe.
Mm,
But they had a conflict, and so Elizabeth went out on her own, and that's when she created S2C, which has they all essentially start from the same place, with
right.
the question hierarchy and with coaching motor planning and typically using the boards. Again, I don't do Speller's method, but the stencil boards typically is what you start with. And I mean, so they're not that different, except that Elizabeth's lessons they're longer, and questions are in colors. I mean, in some ways, I think it's very helpful for parents who maybe, like for me, the hierarchy of questioning is very easy. Being a speech pathologist, I've done that my whole career.
Sure.
But if you're a parent, sometimes finding questions and thinking about questions off the top of your head don't come so easily, and you don't understand that everything you're is like some people ask questions and they're just asking yes no questions.
Yeah.
And you don't, that's not what you want to ask. So like, I did with John Paul, I might talk about, see, and then I differ from Elizabeth because, of course, I have my own ideas about things and my own way of doing things that just came naturally that Elizabeth would disagree with. But I do it Elizabeth's way because I did her first cohort. I couldn't get in on Soma's because Soma, you can only see so many people.
Right.
What I love about what Elizabeth's done is she has been able to bring it to more people.
Yes.
And really
Yes.
create
100%.
this,
Huge.
and she really has, and that's one of her gifts, of being able to do that.
And that's been so essential in all of that. Right.
It has been. We need everybody.
We do need everybody.
I literally will say if a parent calls and they're like, well, which method should I learn? I'm like, well, do you have anyone close by? Are they,
that's the first question. What do you have access to? Because that's really it, and so I don't know a lot about facilitated communication. I have no problem with the touching end of things, despite the fact that so many people just freak out about how it's too guided. I don't have a problem only because I understand with Joey that with his apraxia, specifically Joey doesn't really have feeling much in his hands. So it's really challenging for him to know where his limbs end. And me, during his spell lesson, sit right next to him. And for the very first couple years, I kind of held his hand. And that just helped him be able to focus.
Well, you know what? I'm going to say what you did was fabulous and instinctive.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I think you should have done. I've been doing more of an FC approach with John Paul, and it's really helped him. And I would encourage you. And John Paul and I were kind of a little bit stuck in a way. And Susan said his teacher was like, well, why don't you try a little FC with him? I started exploring that a little bit and realized all I had to do was give him like a little pressure here, and it kind of was a restart for him. Parents need to not be afraid of the rules, in my opinion, of breaking what you have to do because every kid's different. Don't be afraid. It's just, you're just feeling out your kid. You're not going to hurt them. You're not going to, you're just finding stuff. Like my sessions with John Paul was a dance between STC, FC, Speller's Method, and RPM. I would say it was a dance between all of them. And we would just be rocking and rolling, and I'm thinking if a parent didn't know that they can touch their kid and they had all this anxiety cooking about this and that, and their kid's not doing it and then their kid's freaking out. I mean, what a mess. It's like,
it is a mess. And I understand the data end of it. I understand why they want the data without the touching. I get that. But on the other hand, that is getting rid of us as parents in a completely innate, intuitive response, which is to be supportive to our kids.
That, you know what it is? It's ableism at its worst. Because what they're saying is, we're not going to approve this method of communication until you do it.
They're not able.
Like a neurotypical, more like a neurotypical. Well, our kids
Beautifully
are not
said.
neurotypical. So you're putting demands on a population who not only has motor planning issues, they have sensory integration issues, they have anxiety often, they have OCD often, maybe even ADHD, and I'm sorry, they read your, if you don't want to say telepathy, they read your.
Oh, we're going to talk about telepathy. Okay. Trust me. We're segueing in.
Okay. They read the energy. So, it's like, I guess, it's, how dare they really? I mean, I always laugh. I'm like, why do people who have no skin in the game, why does their opinion matter at all? Because I have learned, I think of all the things we had to learn over the years that weren't as good as this, but because they were able to take data on it in the way they wanted to take data on it, they say it's okay. And it is actually hand over hand. And then you're supposed to, kind of reduce the cues. Well, I'm sorry, there's no difference except that we're presuming competence and not worrying about how many times you touch the A out of 10 times. Because with apraxia, they may touch it, 7 times, which is amazing. But if they had to hit it 8 times to reach the goal, I mean, do you see the craziness of that?
It
So
is craziness.
it's so,
Thank you for pointing that out. That's important.
it's horrible. It's like, John Paul, touch your nose. And he touches it 4 times, but misses it the last 2 times. Uh-oh, we got to go back. I mean, come
I
on,
know.
people. If you are so worried about what your supervisor says or what your, and you've got this job and like, oh, Ash is going to, take away my C's. You're terrified to do anything different. I just didn't care because this is my child. So I was in a different place. And maybe had I been a speech therapist who didn't have children or didn't have a John Paul, maybe if my supervisor said, oh, no, we don't do that, I'd be like, yes, ma'am, and not really think for myself because they're just following what they've been told.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the emperor's new clothes. It just feels like nobody's really.
But there are a lot of speech SLPs that are pulling out of the conformity of what they've been told, and they're just willing to risk it because they know it's going to help. Not to mention, you don't need to be an SLP to be a practitioner.
You don't have
Right.
to be. And that is the fabulous thing. So that's the thing that's so wonderful. And my friend even said, what should my child go into that's in college? I said, I really hate to say it, but I wouldn't say be an SB. I said, be an OT. Be
That's
someone where
true.
you have this umbrella
Sensory.
person telling you
Right.
what you, and
Learn
that's a
sensory
major
integration.
organization.
Exactly.
Ash is
Yeah,
made
yeah,
up.
yeah.
It's not even, but they somehow, whoever the charismatic person that came up with this nonsense. So, it just makes me insane. So I told her, I said, if I did it again, I'd go OT all the way. And I have loved being a speech language pathologist until all this happened. I mean, is it better to be ignorant and then you just love everything, but I know the truth? And so now I have to fight for it because there's no way I can let it go. It is paramount that you first learn the methods properly. You don't start messing around till you know exactly what you're doing and you feel out for your child, but do learn the method because a lot of times I'm running into parents who said, it didn't work for my kid, but they also skip steps. They skip the process, and you have to respect the process. So I would never tell a parent, oh, go loosey-goosey. Learn the method first.
So good.
And then
Thank
make
you.
any kind of adjustments.
I think what you're saying is so, so important. I think one of the things that people tell me the most that they do that makes me concerned is they say, where can I buy a letterboard? Okay. And I know what that means. That means that they're just going to go buy a letterboard and they're going to put it in front of their child and expect.
Right.
And then they're going to think, nope, they just don't know. So
that's
yeah,
the biggest thing and parents are impatient. They're like, no, I want to talk to my child now. I felt the same way.
Sure, we all did.
But I was like, this is my chance to do it right. And I did not want to cut corners. I wanted to learn it like I'm supposed to learn it, because then, it's sort of maddening when I hear parents say it didn't work for my kid, because if I ask more questions, I get to it. And it is, they just never did it learn correctly, or the person who was doing it, for whatever reason, thought I would never go in and work with someone's kid and say I'm doing Speller's method until I've done the training. I've never done the training, so I'm not going to say I know how to do that without doing it. So I think that is so important, and it's huge. I go crazy about that because it's such a lost opportunity.
You and I know a lot of what's happening with the whole politics of it, but I think what you said is exceptionally important. You know your child, you know their sensory needs, and you need to support the child first and worry about the research and the actual rules of the program second. But one of the things that is definitely the crux in all of these programs is telepathy. because
Oh, yeah.
and I get it. I get it in the sense that they have worked so hard to get this scientific data, and they are
Mhm.
trying so hard to get it mainstream, and now we're adding telepathy into the mix.
Yeah.
Yet you can't separate them. You can't. You
Right.
can't, like, I've spoken, to Katie Asher about this. I've spoken to Austin Moore about this, Megan Harcourt. Like, we've had so many of these conversations, and Eileen Himmel. Like, I've had some great guests who are not under the constraints any longer. And they all know that it's just completely impossible to separate. And, you know, when all of us parents heard the telepathy tapes for the first time, I'm sure many of us that were already spellers immediately started writing down a number on a piece of paper, then running to our kids and saying, "What is the number that's in my head?" And finding out that their children were, in fact, 100% aware of
Yes.
what they were writing down or what they were holding into their head.
Right.
And there's a little bit of a shock in that this changes everything.
Mhm.
So let's back up a little bit. I just wanted to start with a bang, but then let's back up, because when did the telepathy thing begin with your understanding of it?
I knew that John Paul, I wasn't positive it was full on telepathy as far as he was hearing my thoughts exactly, but I thought he's either reading my energy or something, because if I got really upset about something, all of a sudden he would start crying. We're tired moms, our
Yeah.
kids stop sleeping, and we're,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of noises coming from the back, and it just, it's hard. And then when I kind of pulled myself together, he stopped. Or I would be thinking about something and suddenly John Paul would bring it to me. Or I would be hiding something, and if I started thinking about it, suddenly John Paul found it and was eating it. Usually it had to do with candy or something. So I was suspicious of how intuitive he was
Yeah.
until I met Katie. And then Katie full on said, "Oh, they're so telepathic. And here, let me show you." And so, of course, I tested it. And then I had Thomas's friends were all over. There were like, he had like a crew of about 8 boys, 7 or 8 boys. And this was later. That this wasn't when John Paul was 8. This didn't happen. I didn't really meet Katie until 2019, and it was after the whole Hilton
Oh.
Head thing. So John Paul had been spelling for a long time before I had met Katie. I just didn't realize how telepathic JP was. And then I remember I said, "Hey guys, I want everyone to write something down." So they all wrote, things down. And then I put the board, and John Paul spelled every single thing the boys had written. And there was one boy in particular who really just couldn't even move. He just could not believe what he was seeing. He just, even his dad, we had dinner with them. He was still talking about how his son came home and just said, "Dad, you just don't know what just happened." I mean, it's like when you see it, it's really incredible.
Okay, I want to talk about that, Libby, because I'm sure that there's a technical name for this, but I know exactly what you're saying. And when we are witnessing a lot of what we're witnessing now, as we're starting to understand Joey's telepathy, it's like our bodies can't even receive it. It's
Mhm.
like we're seeing it, but we can't. We just like don't even know where to place it in our head. Is that a way to say it? Like it's just kind of floating around. Like, okay, I know this is a thing. I'm not going to deny it, but I'm also not sure how to even talk about it. Like it's so
Yeah.
crazy that it's such a huge thing that's happening to my intimate family, but yet I share it with so few people because I don't even know how to talk about it yet.
It's interesting you say that, because I sort of shared it with everybody, because here's the
Okay,
thing is
do it,
that's
Libby.
just sort of my personality anyway. And also, ironically, if we were somewhere and they were not being mean to John Paul by any means, but treating him like a baby, but just not thinking there's anything going on in there, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, he's really smart. You can do this, that. And I said, gosh, I said, write a word down. And they write a word down, and they were kind of like, yeah, yeah, that's great, that's great. And then when they did when I showed them the telepathy, suddenly they were paying attention, and they all of a sudden presumed competence at that moment. Now, I will say there are spellers, kids spellers who are unhappy that they have that telepathy is what is the like what about the brilliant things we're saying and all that. That's all true and they're right, except where we are right now in the world with trying to get people to pay attention. If showing that wakes people up, I think that's important. And if put it this way, would some of the great things that are happening right now happen before I mean, so many things have started happening because people are realizing this.
100%.
That it's like maybe you don't like it, but maybe down the road that's not going to even be an issue because that's just we understand that's a part. And it has nothing. The problem is too they worry about people not believing their own words. Well, that's not true either. Spelling and telepathy are two different things. They have nothing to do
Right.
with the other. And John Paul, I can't do math to save my life. John Paul could do math. I mean, the poetry he could come up with, the things he knew and the things he said didn't come from me. I'm talking to you right now, but I'm also thinking, oh, what am I making for dinner? I can think about more than one thing at the same time. I
Sure.
can talk to you and hear a conversation going on in the other room. We it's almost like we all people who love autistics are going like I guess this is gonna come out weird, but um if you wanted to block them and stop them, nothing you said is going to matter. Like, if you hate autism, you're going to hate it. If you love autism, that's just another thing to embrace. I
Mm.
think the ones who are really scared of it, I understand. They love autism and they love their child, and they don't want anyone to mess with the beautiful things they say and think that that's coming from them. And I get that. But my thought also is if we just tell the truth and put it all out at one time, then we're not backtracking. Because if everyone's starts spelling with their kid and suddenly they go, oh wait, my child's telepathic, then you're doing damage control. Like with FC, all of a sudden, one bad thing happens and all these kids lose their FC out of the schools because of one bad thing. And so my thought is, let's put it all out there and then deal with it. But you can't pick what truths you want to tell because that's not the right way
Wow.
to do it. And
That's
it's and
powerful, Libby. Yeah.
then my friend who is she's a neuroscientist and we were talking about it and we were having dinner and she said, Libby, I mean, she saw John. She totally believes in all of it. She said, but you have to admit it's a lot for people to first see the spelling and recognize and believe the spelling and presume the competence. She's like that in and of itself is amazing and eye opening. She's like, but now she goes, you throw in the telepathy, and she said, you're really shouldn't you just do it? I mean, that's like asking them to like go too big. And I said, no, sweetie, that's called ableism. You can't handle it, but that's your problem. That is your
Snap.
issue. And so I'm thinking, why should I not tell the truth about my kid just because it
Love
makes
it.
you uncomfortable? Who the hell are you? It makes me crazy. It's like I'm not going to do that because we're trying to make a paradigm shift. And
Yeah.
it isn't, we can't pick that. We can't say, oh, they're great spellers and they don't have that and deny them a big part of their autism experience. Because if people never find, okay, say someone can't find spelling or they, hopefully this is going to change too, or they can't afford it, which is a whole nother conversation. Um, if they know their children can read their thoughts and they know their child is competent, I would hope that they do things to make their child happier, like keep their negative thoughts under control, or like or put books on tape that are age appropriate, or just start making changes that help your child's overall regulation, because they're not hearing you say how much you hate autism. I hate that you just did. I mean, what it does to kids, because not only can they read the thoughts, but then they can't explain themselves. They're just
Right.
stuck in it.
That's
So,
right.
can you think of how maddening that would be?
Hmm.
Thank God they have the hill that they go to talk to each other and communicate with each other. Because could you imagine living in that silent world, knowing
No,
how
I can't
irritated your
imagine any
parents
of it.
are?
And I can't, and especially with how kind all of them are based on the fact that they've had to endure is what all that they've endured.
Yes,
But
yes,
the separation or not telepathy versus spelling, I don't use the vocabulary that Joey uses. He uses
right.
words and phrases that, we talked the other day about something about being wigged out about something. It's like I've never said that in my life.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
and
right.
so it's like those kinds of things it's unequivocal. But yet on the other hand, what you said earlier, which is so important, is that he can read my thoughts. So the point is, it forces me to choose better thoughts. And
Exactly.
when people say to me, I don't want anybody reading my thoughts, then what do you have to hide? Then what is it that you have to hide? Because if you are really struggling that much with your thoughts, then you need to practice having better thoughts. You need to start listening to a different algorithm of life that is giving you more uplifting information than negative. You need to start
You need to do some
quieting your mind more.
energy
And
healing. I
you,
mean, work
yeah,
on your energy.
turn off the news blah 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 and put
Mhm.
on some piano music. you
Yeah,
know get the vibe different in your home where you're cleaning out the clutter and live a little bit more minimalistically. Like there's
yeah.
so many things that you could do to start bringing more peace to your world. It's endless, all the things that you can do. And
Well,
what a gift now that our kids are pushing us to be more peaceful. Like, of
yeah,
all things, I certainly will never complain about the fact that, you know what, because of Joey, I'm learning to quiet my mind. Because of
yeah.
Joey, I keep a more peaceful household. Because of Joey, the conversations I have in my household are softer, more gentle. All of that is so good for everything who we are. And I have
Yes.
Joey to thank for pushing me a little bit further on that.
And if you think about what all that negative energy and negative talk does to our body, it makes us sick. And
Yes,
and
100%.
so I think for longevity, we always talk about what's going to happen to our kids when we're gone. Like that's a huge worry, but some of these negative thoughts, I mean, if you want longevity, you got to work on your energy and you got to work on your inner self a little bit, because that plays a factor in some of the things people get as they get older. People get Alzheimer's, people get cancers,
Hmm.
people get,
Hmm.
so it's so much better to work on yourself. And I was going to say about the telepathy versus their own thoughts, John Paul was all about the love, where I might be angry and furious about something. Here he's spelling mom. They don't understand. Just love them. I mean, those
Oh,
aren't my words. Trust me. My words are I want to wring that person's neck. It's like he was always trying to teach me that love is all that really matters, that nothing here matters but love. He taught me so much, and it's so funny, even so I have an Instagram for John Paul called Love Like John Paul.
right.
And I laugh so hard because I will do a reel, okay? And I swear I can hear him, Mom, edit, edit. And I do. I hear him, ooh, it's a little too spicy. Bring it down a notch or two, like just keep the
like
love in your
like
heart.
yeah,
I
little
mean, I really
spicy.
do. It's like I will edit something 5,000 times to get
uh
it down to where it started, just,
yeah, I
and
get
it
it.
really is John Paul. It's like right there. I can feel him. I can feel him
Well,
right
I
there.
think the message he's trying to give is meet them where they're at. It's we can't be angry at someone who doesn't see things the way, I'm just talking about this in general, not you and
Yeah,
I, but we can't be angry at people who don't see things the way that we do because they've walked a different walk and
true.
they have reason to believe what they want to believe. And
Mhm.
there's a time when we're all ready. I mean, Libby, now going back in my life, so my son's 32.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't until he was a teenager that I first heard of Soma. But again, Joey was so dysregulated, so self injurious that nobody really recommended that we do this because nobody could ever see Joey being regulated enough to do
Right.
it. And
Right.
the cost at that point, you had to like leave for an intensive training. And I
Mhm.
had three little ones. Like I couldn't leave for an intensive training.
Right.
And so I couldn't figure out in my head how it would even be possible, despite the fact that obviously it would have been tremendously helpful. But it's being ready at the right time. And then I have spent the
100%.
last year on my social media journey apologizing, being humbled, telling people I was wrong over and over again because I really want that humbleness to be something that's received in the sense of we know what we know when we know it. And
Oh,
we're
what you just said is exactly what was happening. I would get people telling me in different ways about spelling, about Soma, and because Soma was the first,
Mhm,
she was the
mhm.
the first. I had a woman hand me a sheet of paper with all the information I needed on it, but I wasn't ready to receive it yet.
Mhm.
I found this sheet of paper. Ironically, I've been looking for this silly sheet of paper forever because I saved it. And it was so weird, but I opened a desk drawer and there it freaking was right there. And I
Oh,
read it. This was recent. I read it and went, I always thought that she didn't give me enough information and that's why I didn't pursue it. No, not at all. That woman was thorough. She was thorough. I just wasn't ready.
wasn't ready.
I had people because he was also so dysregulated. John Paul had sores all over his body. He was picking sores everywhere. I didn't even want to start third grade. We left in the first semester of third grade. And that's when we started the other school. That was right around when we started the spelling journey. But John Paul he was the self-abusive behavior, which he really had his whole life, not the picking sores, but
Right.
even up until he passed away, the head banging, and he would spell, but see, he could spell, I'm not trying to hurt myself, I'm trying to regulate myself. That is what he said. He said, this is
100%.
not, and so it was so nice to understand why he was doing it and make,
Joe just recently spelled, I'm just letting off some steam. And yes,
yes.
exactly. There's
And
so
it's so
much calmness
wonderful
as a
to
parent.
know
Yes.
exactly what this is about. So, and then you understand your child better and you can actually help them regulate better. Does it? I remember when John Paul first started spelling, one of the dads that was there whose kid had been spelling for a while before, it was Reese at Recliff, and
Oh yeah.
I was completely, he was the very first person I saw, and I almost fainted watching him spell. I mean, I still have it on. I was
That's
like with my phone just dying, my hands shaking. And I had asked the dad, I said, did it help with other things? And he said, no, no, it didn't help with like John Paul had a lot of loops and a lot of issues. It didn't help with that, but John Paul could explain himself. He could say, this is what's going on. Once we got to open, and it took a while to get to open, but for me, for his therapist, they got
yeah.
there fairly quickly. For he and I, it took
What
a little
what
longer.
what Libby's referring to as open is when you first start the program, you're basically just doing lessons. And
Mhm.
then once they're able to have their own thoughts and they don't need prompting anymore, they can become an open speller. And that's a bit of what she's referring to. So yeah, and that's when everything really, really changes for
And
sure.
John Paul also, once we were open and we were spelling, if I let my thoughts get interfere, John Paul would stop spelling and then he would spell, you have got to stop, is what he would spell, so that he could go back to what he was trying to say. So
Oh,
the other piece
that's
of
so
that
good.
is that if parents don't, this is the other part, if parents don't know and acknowledge this telepathy piece, then they're actually making the spelling journey a whole lot harder for their kid, because it is a practice. You have got to learn how to quiet your thoughts. And I had to, that's part of, I think even in Speller's method, they don't call it telepathy, at all. But I think that what I've heard from parents is that they do talk about not being able to clear your thoughts. They have a different term for it, which is clever. Anything but telepathy. It's clever. It's clever. It's good. It's good.
What's
It
what's the term?
addresses the issue. Soma calls it influencing. Don't influence. But so
Okay,
they're
that's
all,
fair.
and
That's fair.
I
That's a
don't know.
fair term.
Exactly. And I don't think, and I know SGC doesn't want to discuss it or talk about it, period. But I think that's a real disservice.
It's like
Not
it's like
only,
the figures are in the air. La
yes,
la la.
yes,
No
exactly.
telepathy. Nothing to
And
see here.
it's so funny because I had a girl today reach out to me. I've had a lot of SDC practitioners reach out to me about this. And I said, look, we need everybody. I am
Yeah.
not going to badmouth one person, because everyone has their reason for what they're doing and their
Yeah.
worries, their concerns. And it's really all coming from the place of love. I don't think it's coming from a negative place. It's just that we're all going to agree. I mean, we disagree on stuff and we worry about things. And I remember one mom said to me, she sort of was kind of berating me for the telepathy, talking about it. And I looked at her and I said, guess what? I don't care what you think about it. Don't. You can have your thoughts about it, and I have my thoughts about it, and
That's right.
you can keep them and I'll keep mine, and that's just the way it is. And I will talk about what I want to talk about, and no one, and because it's important. And if you've worked in this field and you've seen so many kids that are so misunderstood, and there's a way to make life better, I said, you're being so short-sighted. This
Yeah.
is a huge thing. And this
Yeah.
is a big thing. And your kid is already spelling. So your kid's fine. Your kid's got it. What about the kids in the world who they may never get spelling, but if their parents know they're in there and they're telepathic, maybe they can make life better. Maybe
That's right.
they'll eventually get to spelling. We can bring these prices down and make it more mainstream. Then maybe more people can get it. Maybe Asha will one day wake up and let everyone, that's already established in the schools. I mean,
Wake up or break down, because whether or not they wake up is one thing, because otherwise they might just self-destruct.
well,
I
I
mean,
think that's
that's
what's going to happen. I
yeah.
think
It's it.
they're in trouble.
They're in trouble. Yeah, there's no question about it.
They,
Yeah.
they well, the human rights violation, really.
Uh, completely. And there's so many incredible advocates, and it's just it's undisputable. I mean, they can say blah 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 blah. It's not this. It's not this. But when you are watching a speller, that's my thing. Anytime I talk to somebody who's criticizing, like, have you ever been at a session with a speller?
No,
Like,
we usually
because
haven't.
it's always so funny, the whole thing of, well, you're touching him. It's like, oh, so you can believe that I'm giving him some sort of Morse code, but yet you can't believe
Oh,
that has the ability to spell.
but this is so bad. The researchers and the scientists who, listen, I love science. Thank goodness we have science. My husband had stage 4 lung cancer and went into remission because of science. They gave him 2
Sure.
months to live. Thank God for science. Thank God for all of that. But telepathy also exists. And I remember we did a roundtable for the telepathy tapes that might be in the documentary that's being filmed or not. And we were all talking, and one of the scientists was like, well, what if we can't measure it the way that it, and I said, well, then that's just because you can't measure it. You're human, and maybe you don't have the capacity to measure it. And that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You can't say that is your limitation, that you can't measure it the way you want it measured. So I'm so
That's
sick
right.
of people being So arrogant.
But I do think that in a time of awakening where there's just this expansion of consciousness and understanding that there's so much more that we can't perceive that exists. And there is a lot more understanding of that, which is why it makes sense that this is all happening right now. I mean, it's
Agree.
what kind of shocked me, and I'm curious about you too. I was amazed how well received the telepathy tapes was. Now, I think Kai did a phenomenal job,
She
so I
did.
give her credit for that. But also, people who I would think would have even listened to it were 100% on board. I mean, even look at Joe Rogan. Like, I mean, it was
Mhm.
amazing to see who was on board. Did that shock you?
It did a little bit, but I felt like, put it this way, when we started the project in 22, which was different, there was no podcast. We were filming a documentary. And
Sure.
I spelled to John Paul, I asked John Paul, I said, now, do you want to do this? This is controversial. This stuff we're talking about. He spelled it has to be done. And then when he died, Kai called me and said, "Okay, here's what we're doing now. We're doing a podcast. I think John Paul has a bigger role in this now. I think." And I said, "I'm gamed. I want to see this mission. Just was a
Yeah.
mission of John Paul's. I want to see it through." So I almost feel like it was supposed to happen this way. That the timing is right. Kai is an amazing storyteller, and putting this together the way she did, I think people are kind of needing something to believe in. Things happen where I think sometimes if we can just raise our vibration, we're more open to them a little bit. And so for me, I didn't have any problem believing any of this. I've always believed in this kind of energy, and that, energy can't be created or destroyed. So I
Right.
didn't honestly know there was a controversy surrounding any of this. So I'm glad I just went into it. It wasn't until, ironically, I was so excited and I would tell someone about it and they kind of poo poo it. Not the telepathy, this is even the spelling. And
Yeah.
I guess I have been fighting it for so long, and having people laugh in my face, tell me I'm crazy. And some of those people will later tell me I'm spelling with my child now. So they had to come to it in
Hmm.
their own.
Sure.
But, with the
As I
telepathy,
did,
I kind of think the
as
same
did
thing.
I.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just,
No.
so it's nothing new. And I was thrilled that I think it's just the timing. People want something to believe in. And this is really changing, I think, people's perception of life, reality, that there is something out there, that death is not the end, it's a new beginning in a different way.
Well, we're hoping that when people hear your message and they tune in, if is the documentary coming out soon?
Tell you, we're finishing shooting in August,
Okay.
and it's been fun. It's been very emotional for me, without John Paul physically here. I mean, sometimes it's
Yeah,
been a
I'm
little
sure.
hard. Like when we did the podcast, it was tough. Originally, it was a hard thing, but I'm gotten to a new place, and it's coming out hopefully in 2026. That's
Awesome.
and hopefully like spring, I'm thinking. So Kai, I don't know how Kai's going to do it, but she is so talented. She's got about 500 hours of filming that she has to condense into an
Wow.
hour and a half, or maybe
Wow.
2 hours. So I'm kind of laughing. I don't know. I might be in it for 5 minutes. I
Yeah, but
don't know how it's going to
yeah,
go.
right.
She's
But
got to tell the story. So I mean,
I'm sure John Paul's going to help with the editing. I'm
I
sure.
think he will for sure. But it could be like, if we get a couple of minutes, it's going to be awesome, because I don't know how she's going to string this story together. It
Oh,
could
it's
be,
so
so
good.
it's going to be cool, whatever it is. And hopefully, I honestly appreciate what everybody in the community is doing for this. Like, even if they don't necessarily agree with it, I still appreciate that everyone is doing what they think is right and doing their part to
Yeah.
help our kids.
Yeah.
I may not agree with the way certain people are doing things, but I always say this is not a one person solution.
Yeah.
Everybody has to do something. Like you're doing your podcast, I'm
Right.
doing my thing. I mean, Elizabeth's doing her thing, Soma's doing her thing. Even a parent who's telling another parent about it is doing her thing. And that's the only way to make this grow.
Well, we're going to, not giving anything away, but I'm going to meet Libby soon. And we are hopefully going to expand some ideas a little bit more and see how
Can't
we can.
wait.
I know. I'm so excited.
So excited.
Some
So
great
excited.
great people are gathering together, and
Yeah.
we need to kind of come together in a way of how we can bring this to the forefront more, how we can strategize with social media to be able to help bring awareness. But also, a passion of mine is to help these kids that are gathering on the Hill find methods of coming face to face as well too, because I think that there could be some incredible power from that,
Oh,
and allowing them to have these relationships that are not just something that they have
yeah.
to achieve, at 8 o'clock at night when the lights are off.
Uh-huh. I
Because
agree.
Joey has a telepathic friend that lives in Hawaii that is visiting right now, and the two of them will sit in the room together for 4 or 5 hours,
I love
just
that.
sitting. And it's so
That's
beautiful to
incredible.
watch. It is. And I
I
love it for
love that
Joey
so
because
much.
I just want these friendships to form. And so you're going to get to meet Joey and myself, and
I
we are,
cannot wait.
I
I
can't wait.
cannot wait for that. Like, I almost want, I told Katie, I said, it'd be so fun is to get in like a big camper or trail,
I
whatever,
know.
and just
Let's,
make our way around and meet all these amazing people that have we gotten to know and meet their kids and their young adults and just,
that's it.
I mean, because I'm dying. I want to like hug and meet everybody.
I know. But Atlanta, I'm telling you, Atlanta's the hub. It's,
I
it's
mean,
the
it's
hub.
we're there's a lot of cool stuff happening, and
Yeah.
I think if we can just all just kind of get come together in spite of differences, in spite of what your philosophy, because that's the only way we're
Yeah.
going to keep making this all work.
Uh-huh.
So I really
That's it.
think that that's the everyone just putting down their walls and saying, "Hey, this is really what we have to do." And I think that's the way to go.
Well, when Katie was on the show, and she was so incredible. And when she was talking about how the talk on the Hill, where first it was this just desire to have any form of hope that this is all going to ever come to fruition. And now it is. So the thing, Libby, that I am really stuck on is it is not just our asking, it is all these beautiful souls who have this asking, that all of that energy is lifting up the mission. And
Yeah,
that's why I have complete confidence that beautiful things and wonderful things are going to happen. So
I agree. I
thank you.
feel it. I feel it in the air. I'm with you on that. I feel it myself.
I love it. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being on the show today. I deeply appreciate
I
it. And I
loved
look,
it.
all right. Take care, everybody. We'll talk with you all next week.
Bye. Thank you so much.